This is a book about no Saal, no Sawal, 9 years, 9 questions, and some of the most relevant questions, relevant topics, relevant failures of the Modi government that need to be questioned. This is a government that has been in office now for 9 years, and they still continue to stick to their colossal jumlas. Tall promises with nothing really delivered on the ground. And may I seek your indulgence before I start asking the 9 questions to ask you, where is the economy? What about joblessness? What about high prices? What about the Chinese incursion? What about the Adani scam? What about the institutional decay? What about the altering of our social fabric? I can keep going on and on and on, but every time you raise these questions before the government has no response, and in fact is too brazen to now tide over democratic institutions, including India's parliament. But I will first begin talking about the questions that we are raising here. The first and foremost question obviously is about the Indian economy, because the Indian economy is in complete ruin. And no, it is not because of Corona. The government cannot hide behind Corona. Indian economy, the economic GDP growth slipped from 8.2 to 4.1% because of the failures of this government before a first case of Corona was reported. There was a 45-year high of unemployment before the first case of Corona was reported. Why are the rich becoming richer and the poor becoming poorer? Why is there such concentration of wealth? Why are we not talking about unemployment? Who is talking about job creation? Today, the travesty of our times is that the Prime Minister who promised 2 crore jobs every year, and at the end of his 9-year term should be talking about 18 to 19 crore jobs, is actually giving out 1,000 appointment letters, something that used to come through a postman in our mailboxes. So, why the economic ruin? Why have you made policies only for your friends? What about unemployment? What about high prices? And definitely, what about the income inequality? So that's the first question, the economic ruin. The second question, of course, is about farmers. And I think it's a very important question. Crores of farmers protested against this government consistently. 750 of them lost their lives. The government had promised to look into the MSP matter. It's been over a year and a half. Where is the promise? This government had said we will double farmer income by 2022. The average Indian farmer is today saddled under high loan and is only earning 27 rupees a day for subsistence. So what about the tall promises? And quite frankly, this empty promise and empty claim that they make about, Kisan Samman Nidhi, you are actually looting the farmer. You are giving them pittance, and in turn you have put GST on fertilizers, GST on insecticide, GST on farming equipment, on tractors, and look at the prices of diesel that is so high, which is the main fuel that's used for agriculture. So you have made agriculture non-remunerative and extremely expensive. Look at the cost of electricity, the cost of diesel, the cost of pesticides, the cost of seeds, the cost of insecticide, everything, fertilizer. So you're looting the Indian farmer, your commitment to MSP is under question. The third, and I think a very important question that we are raising, is about crony capitalism and corruption. There is blatant, brazen corruption in this government. The government is saddled with charges of corruption. Mr. Modi is repeatedly asked questions on Adani. How did Adani get away with crony capitalism? Why were laws only being made and altered for Adani? Why was the level playing field destroyed? Why were ports, airport laws changed to accommodate one man? Why were big assets brought to NCLT, taken a haircut and handed over to Adani? Not a word. There have been scams during the COVID time. Not a word. The Prime Minister doesn't utter the word Adani. He speaks for 2 hours, 40 minutes in parliament, and yes, doesn't utter the word Adani, but what he instead does and his government does is through a conspiracy, they actually oust Rahul Gandhi from parliament, an MP from Kerala, your state, who was raising the voices of the people and unmasking them on the Adani issue. That is what they do. Let's talk about the other important issue, and this is the fourth question that we are raising, national security. I am sure you remember that before becoming the Prime Minister of India, the Prime Minister used to say, we should show red eyes, bloodshot red eyes to China. He instead now wears a red shirt. Where are those red bloodshot eyes? 20 of our brave hearts were killed. What have we done? We have made China our largest trading partner in the last 3 years. We run a deficit of $100 billion with China. And the Prime Minister, when he meets Xi Jinping for the first time after our brave hearts were killed in a bitter feud, he stands there and exchanges niceties. What about teaching China a lesson? And our national security is compromised because you have withdrawn troops till where they used to go. Patrolling point 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16 in the Galwan region. You have withdrawn troops. The troops used to pedal till those points. You have made them buffer zones. You gave up strategic Kailash hills. So these are very important questions that are being asked. And they all happened because on the 19th of June 2020, India's Prime Minister lied to this country and to the world when he said nobody has entered our territory. If nobody had entered our territory, who were the bravehearts ousting and why did they lose their lives? And today it is unfortunate that during the core commander talks, the Chinese sit across the table. The PLA says, we are saying what your Prime Minister says. It is an absolute irony and a travesty of our times that the Prime Minister of India lied to all of us. And China is using it to its advantage. So that's national security for you. What's your engagement with Pakistan? You were the first one in the last 9 years who's invited ISI and Pathankot. You go unannounced to Lahore. You are giving tickets to people who have relations across the border. Asya Andrabi is the face of your Beti Bachao, Beti Padhao in Jammu Kashmir, and she has huge connections. She goes for training across the border. So these are very relevant questions that will be asked on national security. I think the fifth question is extremely important, extremely relevant to a place like Kerala. Social harmony. Why is the BJP, why are members of the BJP, MLAs, MPs, ministers, including the Prime Minister, hell-bent on tearing the social fabric of India? I think this is a subject that we all want answers to. Karnataka was in elections right now, and Karnataka has taught the BJP a very important lesson. And that lesson is that the issues of the people are relevant. If you are going to talk about irrelevant issues, we will teach you a lesson. What lesson has been taught? The lesson is you cannot come to Karnataka and share a propaganda story like Kerala, movie like Kerala story. Why is the BJP hell-bent on destroying the social fabric? We have continued to for centuries. We are 5,000-year civilization. We have continued to peacefully coexist. If the Prime Minister of this country from an election rally stage says, I recognize people by the virtue of what they wear, it tells you how hell-bent this government is for destroying the social fabric. I think the sixth question is again extremely important, the question about social justice. And that also brings me to the raging issue of the day, and I will talk about it in just a minute. But look at the conditions of OBCs, of SCs, of STs, of the marginalized, of the communities that have suffered for decades. Where are they? All that the BJP does is tokenism. But the crime against women, the crime against minorities, the crime against marginalized, the crime against SCs, the crime against STs have gone up many fold. Why? Because this brute majoritarian government does not care about the rights of the people. We have been asking consistently, what about the caste census? You have now been in government for 9 years. Why are you shying away from that? And that is what social justice is, and that's exactly what we are talking about. Why is the Prime Minister silent on atrocities? And that brings me to the big issue of the day. We had a Dalit president, Shri Ramnath Kovind. He was not invited to lay the foundation stone of the parliament, but his name was tom-tommed all over. Dalit president, Dalit president, Dalit president. Why did you not invite him? Article 79 of the Constitution clearly states the President, the Council of States Rajya Sabha and the Lok Sabha together make up India's parliament. Why is our first citizen, the supreme commander of our forces, the custodian of our constitution, and a woman who has made a stunning rise, who is the first tribal woman to be elected the president of our republic? Why is Srimati Draupadi Murmu being denied the opportunity to inaugurate India's parliament? You tom-tom her name as Dalit woman, as tribal woman. But when it comes to giving her due, why are you not letting her do it? And that's what social justice is. Social justice is to bring the marginalized, to bring the people who have suffered for centuries to the fore. You're not doing that. You only do tokenism. The seventh and a very important question is about democracy and federalism. And this is an important question. What keeps a democracy alive? I think this is a question that all of us have answers to. There may be different answers, but the confluence of the answers will be what keeps our parliamentary democracy alive are institutions that were built to protect it. And today happens to be the death anniversary of Pandit Nehru, who relentlessly envisioned, fought for, and established the very basis of our parliamentary liberal democracy. Institutions like the agencies, institutions like the judiciary, institutions like your esteemed selves, like the media. Why are you attacking the autonomy and independence of institutions? And it's not just us who's saying it. Look at the Supreme Court. What does the Supreme Court say? That the government cannot be run by sealed envelopes. The Supreme Court has passed an order that the Chief Election Commissioner or other election commissioners should be appointed by a panel which comprises of the Prime Minister of the country, the Leader of the Opposition, and the Chief Justice of India. Why is that so? Because undermining of institutions, agencies, the CBI, the ED, the income tax, these are no longer autonomous agencies. They have become frontals of the BJP that Mr. Modi and his party uses to settle political scores. They only do cases against India's opposition. There has been a fourfold increase in those cases, and 95% of those cases are against opposition. This is not coincidence. This is exactly how you misuse agencies. And your relationship with states. The BJP-ruled states may say it in a far toned-down version, but the opposition states, your relationship with states is so bad that states are not even willing to agree to come to meetings that the Prime Minister of Niti Aayog are calling. Why? Because you are denying states their due. You let the states lose during COVID. You kept all control with yourself. Money that should have been shared with the states is lying in some PM CARES fund that nobody knows about. You are almost at war with opposition states. You are keeping GST dues of the state. How do you expect states to do welfare when you're going to keep all of this to yourself? So I think, this jumla, this colossal jumla of cooperative federalism was actually competitive federalism. When you are in government in Maharashtra, projects that came to Maharashtra are going to be pulled away and go to Gujarat. What sort of federalism is that? India is a beautiful bouquet where our states are very, very diverse. You cannot impose the same rules. You cannot impose the same polity. You cannot impose the same sensibilities on Kerala that you can do to a Haryana or an Uttar Pradesh. And you have to understand the diversity, celebrate it, protect and preserve the diversity. This imperialism of language, every scheme is going to be named in one language. Why? Why should you not say that there are people in this country who don't speak Hindi? And they should be celebrated as much. So I think federalism and democracy is a big part of what this government has done, and huge questions are being raised there. The eighth point, of course, is about welfare schemes. You know, people of this government and people within the BJP will come and tom-tom and do some chest thumping and say, we have given food grains to 86 crore people. Why? Why did you have to? Because you have pushed the country to a brink due to joblessness, price rise, rising poverty, rising levels of income inequality, that you now have to do this to sustain their lives, to sustain their livelihoods. It is your failure that you are having to distribute free ration. It is your failure that income inequality has gone up. It is your failure that you tell the world we have surpassed UK in being the third or the fifth largest economy in the world. But guess what? UK's per capita income is $50,000. Our per capita income is $7,000. So you can fool some of the people some of the time. You can't fool people all the time. Consistently, budget after budget, money on education, funds for health, and funds for social welfare schemes have gone down. I say it with empirical evidence. As percentage of the GDP, money on social welfare schemes, on education, and on health have consistently gone down. What is allocated under these heads is not even fully utilized. So where are the welfare schemes? What's the big welfare? That you're giving people free ration. Is that welfare? India is a welfare state. Why will you not give it? And you must give it. And I think last but not the least, I will have to speak about COVID mismanagement. The government may want to erase it from public memory, but the reality is that 40 lakh people in this country died. Death data was suppressed. I come from the state of Uttar Pradesh, where I saw dead bodies floating in the Ganga. I have never seen funeral pyres being lit next to each other, hundreds of them together. And when India was gasping for breath, when India was gasping for oxygen, the Prime Minister was too busy doing Namaste Trump and too busy convening parliament to topple a democratically elected government in Madhya Pradesh, from where they will be ousted very soon. When India needed vaccines, the Prime Minister was in Bengal doing Didi, oh Didi. And so questions will be asked. So these are our 7 questions. I'm happy and willing to take the questions that you may have on this. But I think 76 years after our independence, almost 9 years, almost 10 years, completion of its tenure, it's time for the BJP to show its report card. And its report card on economy is a big red. Its report card on unemployment is a big red. On price rise is a big red. And each time you raise these issues, the government's brazen retort. You talk about unemployment, they say go fry fritters, pakoda tallo. You talk about high prices, our finance minister says, I don't consume onion garlic. You don't, the rest of the country does. And so you have to do something about it. And look at the management of the economy. You now have GST on yogurt, you have GST on common flour, you have GST on hospital beds, you have GST on medicine, you have GST on stationery, books and pencils. What is the priority of this government? 9 years later, we needed a report card from this government. What we instead have is brazen defense of the mismanagement, is brazen silence from the Prime Minister. And one issue that we continue to raise is the voice of women. I see a lot of women here, and I'm a woman as well. I live in Delhi, and a stone's throw away from the Prime Minister's residence and his office, India's most decorated women athletes, people who have brought us great glory, people who Mr. Modi was absolutely the first to go and get photographs clicked with, are sitting in protest. They have raised charges of sexual misconduct against one of their own MPs. He continues to be an MP. He continues to be the head of the Wrestling Federation of India. Why? And the same Prime Minister who was calling these girls their family and things like that doesn't want to go and speak to them. The Delhi police doesn't register an FIR. Amit Shah's Delhi police, the court has had to intervene. I think they're big reds, but happy to take your questions first. Suo moto, I'll be very happy.
How does the inauguration of the new parliament between opposition parties, many of them are quite wrong. But what the BJP is saying is that Congress is playing politics over Why can't the Prime Minister inaugurate? I mean, this is what you're saying. How will you respond?
So thanks for your question. I think I fleetingly touched it. I think through you, your viewers and your readers should be reminded that the supreme document in our country, the supreme text, the most sacred, holy text in our country is our constitution. We are a parliamentary democracy run by the constitution of our land. A constitution that our forefathers had the foresight and the farsight to build, which still holds true today. Article 79 of the constitution clearly states India's parliament comprises of